At Sight and Scene, we feature the innovators, disruptors, and changemakers using reality capture technology to drive real impact. These are the people who saw a problem, challenged the status quo, and took action, whether restoring ecosystems, improving resilience, or transforming infrastructure.
They bring a deep sense of responsibility and stewardship to their work, leveraging technologies like drones, laser scanning, GIS, and mapping to create meaningful change. More than just experts, they're storytellers, sharing their journeys and the why behind their work. Our mission is to amplify their voices, educate, and inspire others to push boundaries and take action.
Sight and Scene.
You don't care for the analysis, you care for the insights. And so how do we get you faster from data capture to data insights? That's all you care about as a user with this data.
We are back in the studio of Sight and Scene for another episode. Scott, it's been a bit. How you doing, bud?
Good. Enjoying, this is our first after hours one, I think. I'm enjoying a nice beer since it's 6 p.m. here finally. So first time I can actually like relax on a podcast, which is great.
It's still 3 o'clock my time. So
I'm sorry.
I might have a problem if I'm starting now, but maybe, So it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
There you go. Exactly.
Geez. All right. Well, it has been a little while. We actually stored up, like 3 recordings that we've been releasing over the weeks. And Scott and I haven't had a chance to sit down with somebody here in a little bit. So it feels good to be sitting back in the studio and chatting about our next guest here, which we'll introduce in just a second. But because it's been a bit, what you been up to?
Quite a bit. I know we haven't recorded one in a while because I think it's been so darn busy. Been doing a lot. Sure I could talk about this more in a future episode, but we're doing like a 13 property LiDAR survey we just wrapped up a couple of weeks ago. Still processing, still doing topo for that work. That was a lot of fun, and we were really lucky to get good weather in there because it's just kind of rained every other day here. I mean, it's April for New York, but we had like a perfect, beautiful, sunny weather week that just happened to line up with that project. So I'll take that.
Yeah. No, and we did touch, I'll say we haven't really sat down for a podcast, but we've been touching base over the weeks here. And it's been awesome to hear about that project. It's, I'm sure some down the road, you'll be able to share a little more about it, but that's really great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Same on my end. Obviously the weather improving and people getting excited and, all at the same time with just the herky jerky. Can we say the herky jerky economy and just, things that are happening politically? It's been really unnerving. And I think just seeing the impacts of that on business has just been interesting. But so same for me. I've been out doing some LiDAR jobs, doing a lot of work with photogrammetry and some earthwork contractors. And it's pretty exciting. I actually started to work with it's a national engineering firm who had, multidisciplinary. I'm working with their local office here to be their on-call drone pilot for all of their work. So awesome. That's really exciting. Yeah. That'll really help and that fill in the troughs of the work and just continue to grow.
Yeah. And just on that note, real quick, like that brings up a good point of, as we talked about, like back in Joe's episode, mentorship, right? Like pairing up with a team that knows a lot of what you don't know. And then you bring all the drone or remote sensing expertise. To me, that's been so win-win. Like that was my relationship with Walden, and we had them on and that was awesome. And I think that's worked out really well. So that's always a big tip I have for people of like that mentorship pairing with like remote sensing and then another industry or another group of people who are experts in something. That's just, I'm sure that's going to work out awesome for you.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited, and I think in this case it was more about, it was consistency. I think having a central kind of pass through for the work and the processing is really critical instead of having that bifurcated and different people and maybe things aren't happening in a consistent way. So that was a big driver too. So really excited about that. Yeah. And I'm about to introduce our guest, but I did want to just put out a call to our listeners that Scott and I have a healthy list of folks that we have on our interview list coming up, but we're always excited to hear from you and see if you would like to be on the podcast or know somebody that has interest in a lot of the things that we're talking about. We'd love to talk to you. So if you do, please reach out to us. And our email address is siteandscenepodcast@gmail.com. And that's SITE and scene, SCENE, podcast@gmail.com. So awesome. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah. All right. Super excited for our guest today. I've been following these guys for a long time, and I just think the impact that they're having is really exciting in the geospatial world, and particularly coming at it from an environmental side of things. We have Paul Mead with us, who is the co-founder of GeoNadir. And Paul's all the way on the other side of the world, so we'll get to that here in a second. But he's gone from disposing of bombs in the military to disposing of bombs in business. In both careers, he has had close calls, but no significant unintended explosions. That's good. Paul's careers have provided him with unique insights and skills around strategic leadership in complex environments, confidence under fire, and a focus on details because your life depends on it. He has used these skills to deliver projects on both national and international stages, built a STEM education social enterprise to be intentionally recognized. He's raised over $7 million in equity and non-equity funding, advises the national non-for-profit boards, strategy and governance, and now builds GeoNadir with his co-founder, Dr. Karen Joyce. In 2016, Paul was recognized as the Institute of Managers and Leaders Emerging Leader of the Year, and gained his Chartered Managers Accreditation in 2020. Paul holds a master's in philosophy from the University of Queensland. Outside of work, Paul's on the beach volunteering at his local surf lifesaving club and on the water enjoying the Great Barrier Reef. Man, there it is. Paul, welcome.
Hello, fantastic. Thanks so much for the introduction, and great to be on here with you all.
Yeah. Nice to have you. It's I think this is our first international guest. Isn't that right, Scott?
Yeah, it is. So that's very exciting, and I don't think you get more international on the other side of the other hemisphere over there. So that's great.
Yeah. Well, I like to always start with water. I just love the ocean. I love everything about it. I'm more comfortable in the water than on land, I think. So just hearing a little bit on our pre-interview when we were talking about your work on the Barrier Reef and working with kids and lifesavers. I was actually a lifeguard most of my life as a swimmer. I swam my whole life, but just tell us about life in Australia from your perspective.
Well, it's probably exactly what you all sort of think of us Aussies over your way, right? Sort of bronzed muscles on the beach, No, look, it's
blonde hair,
yeah. No, look, we live in a privilege to live in an absolutely beautiful part of the world on the Great Barrier Reef up in Cairns, so right up the northeastern edge of Australia. And yeah, look, what I love doing outside of work is being on the beach. Getting a bit of sand between my toes every weekend is my recharge. And lucky enough to work with kids, with our nippers, is what we call them, and being able to train them as our next surf lifesavers. So that there is what I love to do outside of work, and fills my cup for the next week at work.
Yeah, well, I know surfing culturally is big in Australia. I know that's one of the hot spots in the world for surfing. Do you surf?
No, I don't surf. I was brought up in New Zealand, in a surfing town. Didn't surf, but did a lot of surf life saving. So,
nice.
All that side of things. But yeah, didn't surf as what you probably imagine it as.
Yeah. And have you actually had to pull someone out of the surf? And
luckily, no. No. So we've had people that have, but in sort of our club and that, we live on the Great Barrier Reef, so we don't have the same waves as you do down in Sydney, for instance.
Right.
The reef is out there. It's a barrier reef. It stops a lot of those big waves coming in. Our big challenges up our side are you probably crocodiles and jellyfish.
It's the wildlife, not the waves, that'll get you, right?
Correct. So yeah, we try to clear people out of the water before those things come. So that's our biggest challenge up where we are.
I mean, do you have like certain currents or times of the year? I'm sure this is pretty much everywhere. Like certain wildlife will come into your area, and I remember hearing things about the box jellyfish. Is that a thing that's a concern?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so we're just coming out of that season at the moment. So October to May, when we get lots of rain, the creeks, the river systems fill up. The crocodiles start moving for mating season, and so they are off to find a mate in another river. And the jellyfish start to get washed out of the creek systems and get blown back onto the beach. And so that's the time when we start to see things. We have nets in that help to stop a lot of the box jellyfish. But yeah, we have things in place to try and find the jellyfish and prevent people from getting stung. But it happens sort of most years that you get people stung and end up in hospital. But we try and prevent that as much as possible.
Are there not to make this a surfing podcast, and all of that, but do you remember? I love the beach, but hate jellyfish. So I've done a little research on this. But
hate is such a strong word, Scott.
Yeah, that's true. Highly dislike. Don't they have like stations where they I don't know if they have vinegar or something? Isn't there like a deactivator or something for their stings that you have on hand so that
there is? Yeah, look, you can we pour vinegar on. That sort of helps to reduce the burn. And the burn, I mean, to that burning sensation. But yeah, some of them are pretty dangerous. You'll end up in hospital still with a bit of pain. It attacks the nervous system.
Yeah. Well, in our part of the world, I mean, we obviously have some dangerous sea creatures, but nothing like. It seems like the most deadly, and I think this is one of the things that probably Americans have this stereotype of Australia. It's like, the most dangerous spiders, snakes, marine life is, and I don't think it's all that untrue.
Well, so we've come on here, and you see you've got this international guest from Cairns, and people go, I want to go to Cairns, and then I come on and just destroy everyone's dreams about it's like still come on over. It's we get into the safe part. Come over when it's nice weather over here, and you'll be fine.
It's on my bucket list for sure. I've been to Southeast Asia and that part of the world, but I have not been to Australia or New Zealand, but it is high on my list. So if I do make it that way, I'll definitely be looking you up, Paul.
Absolutely. Come on up.
Yeah. Okay. Before we get into a lot of the topics we want to talk about today, we always like to do our segment piece with some fun facts, where we're sharing just a little bit fun fact about our region or something that came out of your region that had a larger impact, either nationally or globally, or alternatively, just sharing a fun fact about the content of today's episode. So, Paul, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, look, I was sort of giving a bit of an introduction there about what I love to do. You said, do you surf? My fun fact, actually, though, is that rather than sitting on a board, I like to sit on the back of something that's got a motor. So you'll find me a lot of the time on a boat or on a jet ski and zooming around, sort of looking after our nippers and our people in the water. That's what I love doing, and it's sort of that fact about me. You think. I enjoy being on a board. No, I enjoy being on the back of something that's got a motor that goes a little bit faster.
Nice. Love it. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, I didn't intentionally make this beach themed so far, but I think it fits in. First off, like I said, I'm enjoying a nice beer. I'm a big craft beer person, and I'm happy to have a Montauk Summer Ale. So I was like, let me talk about the lighthouse. So Montauk, big summer place here too. Big. A place where a lot of people go to enjoy the beach here on Long Island, and as it's just opening up, but it's got a lighthouse. A lot of people know Montauk probably better by the lighthouse than the beaches, honestly. And it has the 4th oldest active lighthouse in the U.S., but it was the first commissioned U.S. public works project Second Congress we've ever had, still under George Washington's tenure. Commissioned it. I forget the exact dates. I think it was like 1792 is when they started construction. So it's been here a while, and it's still in operation, which is really cool. It's gone through some upgrades, but it's a bit near and dear to my heart too, because on top of I love going out east, I try to do it every summer. It's kind of where I like cut my teeth on photogrammetry. Mm-hmm. When I kind of say if you can model a lighthouse with photogrammetry, you can kind of model anything, because it's got glass, it's got texture, it's usually near the water, so there's some wave action going. You have to contend with that. And so as we first bought our drones and I was first jumping to photogrammetry, I would go out there and I would kind of do the Montauk Lighthouse over and over and be like, all right, I want to get this really, really good. And the fun fact is, eventually, I think it was like Yahoo News. It was like some news outlet, part of Yahoo, reached out because I had put it on Sketchfab, and they actually reached out and they're like, hey, we're doing a piece on Montauk for the summer, and we came across your 3D model of the lighthouse. You mind if can we use it? And I was like, oh, heck yeah. I mean, we're just doing it for fun. So yeah, we had some VR 3D piece that they had made way back when VR was looking like it was going to take off and you could view the lighthouse in 3D. But I enjoyed that. That was our 5 minutes of fame there. But it was the perfect one to get in a news story, because I love that area, and the lighthouse is very cool. It's a very iconic part of Long Island.
Well, what's the first oldest? The oldest.
I didn't look that up. Yeah, now I'm going to have to. But
all right.
I'm going to guess Massachusetts.
Yeah, right. Out on the Cape or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sticking with water with my fun fact. So here in Portland, Oregon, we're right on the Willamette River. A lot of, how you tell when someone's not a local or just moved here, they call it the Willamette, but it's the Willamette. So we say it's the Willamette, damn it. So that helps singe it in. But on the Willamette, just due south of downtown Portland, is the second largest waterfall by volume in the United States, next to Niagara Falls. So it's this huge waterfall, not necessarily vertically. I mean, it probably has maybe like an 80-foot drop or something like that, but it's just this huge horseshoe waterfall. Really, really impressive, and particularly times of the year when the snow melts coming out of the mountains and the Cascades, and you get all this influx of flow, and then of course big storms in the winter. But it interestingly, in the early settlement of this area, they built all this industrial, of course, rivers were means of commerce. They weren't necessarily means for recreation back in the days. So there's all of this dilapidated industrial complex built around the falls. And now all of the tribal nations have got together, because it used to be a really historically important place for tribal folks to, fishing and trade. So they're working with some developers trying to do something with the site to bring it back to life. But there's actually still an operating, there's still one of the things that's operating there, but it had the longest electrical transmission line in the United States from the hydroelectric plant there to downtown Portland back in the day. So cool. Pretty cool little fact about the Willamette River here in Portland. Okay, so Paul, Australia. It seems like Australia is a hotbed of geospatial innovation. That's our perspective. But do you view that as well from your side? Do you see there is a lot happening in geospatial innovation here, and obviously GeoNadir is one of those really important companies and endeavors in that space. But why do you think that is, and what's driving that?
Yeah, look, I think there is a lot that comes out. So you got NairMap that I know is in Australia, started in Australia, now in the US as well. Probably one of our biggest exports, I suppose, in the geospatial, from startup to scale up. I think that you've got as well a lot with Geoscience Australia, so one of our government agencies that does a lot. And I think it comes back to size here, right? So Australia's about 77% the size of USA in land area, but we've got 26 million people compared to 330 odd million people, right, in the US. Right. And so we're one of those. We're very sparsely populated, and we have got a huge amount of biodiversity, and we go from the Great Barrier Reef to deserts to agriculture, cropping. We have got it all here in Australia in terms of those ecosystems. But when you've got a country nearly the size of the US, but with a population of Texas,
Mm-hmm.
how do we monitor our ecosystems? That's a huge challenge, and one that satellite and drone technology is uniquely positioned to be able to solve. That geospatial technology, we've got to use it. It takes me to fly from where I am to Perth. It's flying from the east coast to the west coast of the US.
Yeah.
So we are big. We drove. It took us to drive from the east coast, Brisbane, up to Darwin. We did this a number of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We drove 5 days.
Wow.
One day we drove for 8 hours, and I turned 4 corners. Right, like the place is big,
Yeah.
and there's lots in there that we need to keep an eye on from an environmental perspective. So I think that we do think about this from that context, and so then we have a bit of geospatial innovation that's happening in this country to be able to respond to things. We've then also got those things like bushfires, floods, coral bleaching. These things happen on a scale that are pretty big, and we are prone to those natural disasters. Those natural disasters are cropping up more and more these days with everything that's happening in the world. So yeah, again, how do we respond to those sorts of crises as well? Geospatial data comes in and helps us.
Cool.
Yeah,
very cool. So you mentioned a lot of environmental factors in that there, and so I'm quite curious because it seems that GeoNadir is focused. I'd say seems to have a pretty heavy environmental bent. If I'm estimating that right, how did you decide that? Were you in the environmental sciences more traditionally, and then jumped to GeoNadir, or was this something you actually sought out through GeoNadir?
Yeah, so my co-founder, Karen, is a remote sensing scientist. She's spent her career working on the Great Barrier Reef and looking at, how much coral bleaching we have on the Great Barrier Reef, how much live coral we have. And so the environment has always been there in terms of what we're passionate about. But I think that everyone should be thinking about the environment here, because the environment's not just a sector, right? It's not, you are in the environmental sector, that's what you do. Well, no, the environment is a stage on what everything else happens, right? If you are in construction, you are building on top of an environment, and you have to, as an engineer, as an architect, you have to work out, how am I going to build this here so that it interacts with the environment, and how do I, hopefully you're thinking as well, how do I have a positive impact when I am putting built infrastructure on top of the natural environment? And what's that legacy that this building is going to leave over time? So environment is not a sector, it's a stage on which everything else happens. And so how do we help people to do the right thing? Right? Because what we feel is that a lot of the tools and a lot of that data that we're collecting, it's not easy for people to get the insights that they need in order to do the right thing. And I would say that the majority of people in this industry want to do the right thing for the environment.
Yeah.
Whether we make it easy for them to do that, there's where we come in, and we sort of feel, well, how do we help you to go from that data collection, whether it's satellite data or drone data, through to insights a lot faster, so that you can then make better decisions, not only for your project, but also for the environment, because I actually think that they join together, right?
Yeah.
In what we're doing.
Yeah. I think somewhere in human history, we got this idea that we're separate from nature and somehow we have this dominion over nature, where in fact we are part of nature and we need to work in collaboration, and just we're in it. And I think that mentality has been really, really detrimental to our way of dealing with things.
Yeah. And that we feel that we can tame and control
Yes.
nature,
Right.
right? And I think that we just look at a few things. We say nature will kick us in the ass every single time it wants to, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's reminders of that all over the place.
Yep.
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 So it sounds like a little bit of how, well, leading into how did GeoNadir come about? Because, you know, quite a bit looking at your profile and all of the things that you've done throughout your career, which really, really interesting stuff, by the way. Maybe, hopefully we have time to get into some of those things, but what was the kind of inception of GeoNadir and how did it come about?
Yeah, so it came from Karen, right? And so Karen was working with satellite data and field data on the reef back in the late 90s. Then around 2013, got the opportunity to come over to the US and do some work with NASA, and they were very early on starting to use drones and some of those commercial off-the-shelf drones for bushfire monitoring. And so Karen got the opportunity to come over and say, well, how are you doing this? Like, what does this look like? And came back with those skills and that knowledge and started to build a drone technology capability within Charles Darwin University, and then came across to James Cook University back out on the reef, and went from, you know, one of the very first drones, I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but one of those, the very first drones, and strapping a GoPro to the bottom of the drone going, I wonder if this will work, right? And can we set the GoPro to take photos at certain intervals whilst we fly it manually? And oh wow, this works.
Yeah.
Look at the detail I can see, you know, compared to my satellite data. And so all of a sudden, we're sort of starting to get this deeper insights, ultra high resolution data from something that we've just strapped together. And then, you know, then it's like the Phantom comes out, and this is a game changer. It's got an integrated camera. And so this technology has evolved. And as that technology has evolved, we've gone from capturing hundreds of photos or tens of photos to thousands of photos. And we can do those thousands of photos when battery life was 10 minutes, if you were lucky, to now battery life is 49 minutes on the Matrice 4. And all of a sudden, we are collecting so much data. It's so much easier to plan that mission. You know, your drone's flying at 21 meters per second, collecting data. And it is like, wow, like technology has moved. But what also has moved is the complexity. And how do I process that data? How do I manage that data so that I can actually find it again later?
Yeah.
How do I analyze this data at scale? Because now actually I'm collecting too much data for me to analyze and keep on top of. But then also, how do I share that data with others? Right? How do I share this data with people on my site who are not technically GIS analysts, or they just want to click on something, zoom, and oh, there it is. Right? And so that workflow is something that has been a challenge. We've democratized the capture of the data. You know, anyone can go and buy a drone, be flying it, capturing data. But then that other piece of that workflow has not been democratized. And that's what we're focusing on, is saying the data process, manage, analyze, share should be as easy as it is to fly your drone and capture the data first up.
Yeah. Cool. And I would say I discovered GeoNadir a couple of years ago because I was on the, you know, I guess I started my business about 3.5 years ago on the drone side of things. And I discovered GeoNadir pretty early on. And what I really loved about it, and just how you said it was a democratized access to how you can not only collect, but then process that data and then share it. And what I really appreciated is because at the same time I was dabbling in, as you know, ArcGIS, and, you know, ArcGIS has come a long, long way as far as its intuitive how to use it. It's an extremely powerful piece of software, but for someone just to jump right into ArcGIS and have a clue of like how to get good information out of that, whereas GeoNadir is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. You come in here and there's very intuitive tools to, you know, start digitizing and get what you need. And what I really appreciated as somebody who's been in construction is just that collaboration piece where you could literally stick a pin anywhere on your map and have a comment and mention people. And like, just to me, that was brilliant. So I was like, this is a really awesome tool. So, I'm wondering just the industries that you're typically targeting through GeoNadir. And I don't know if we want to call them industries, kind of how we were talking up front, but what is the impact that you hope to have, and who is a typical client, if there is one, for GeoNadir? Like, what is your focus, would you say?
Yeah, look, really interesting question. We are not saying, so there are other platforms out there that are very industry specific. So you look at another fantastic Australian one is Propeller, and they have the arrow points, and they are very much focused on the mining, aggregate, sort of civil construction type industries.
Yeah, I know them well. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And then you've got Drone Deploy, obviously, and Drone Deploy has gone very much into that mixed reality or digital twins, and with utilizing a lot of their, the dog robots, the 360-degree cameras, and they've built that on top of their drone side of things. Again, very much focused on that asset management, construction sort of side of things as well. And so what you find is a lot of the tools that are very focused on those specific industries that are deep in there. So where we've focused is very much on that. What's changed in the environments that you care about? Now, the environment you care about, when I say the word environment, people go to the beach, the desert, the whatever that ecosystem is. But it could also be the environment being the project site that you're doing some construction on. And there's always an interface between the built and the natural environment. And we build tools to help you measure things, identify things, and see what's changing over time. All right? And so if those are things that you want to look at, then we've got tools to enable you to do that. All right? So slightly different tools to other drone platforms. What our superpower though is, and I think Mike, you hit this there before, is that ability to share. We are dealing with really big data, and so that ability to be able to share in the cloud, send a link. So it's literally as simple. We stole this from Google, right? The ability to share a Google Doc. We said that there is the most simple interface that we have, right? Just click share, put an email in, tell them whether you want to view it, comment, or edit it, and click share. So that is as easy as it is. You get an email in your inbox, click on that, boom, there it is. All right? And we call it collaborative mapping. So you are there collaborating with others live in the environment, and you can all be in there at once. That there is our superpower, because this data needs to be shared. We work in teams, so you need to collaborate on things. We work remotely more and more now, and so we're not all around the same computer. So how do we all work in the cloud collaboratively on this data that's big?
I think you hit the nail on the head there again, because I'd worked with a couple of like environmental consultants myself, and I've heard a running joke in the industry is you write a great report and you put all your heart and soul into it, and then it sits on someone's shelf in a binder for 10 years and hopefully somebody acts on it. So sharing has been very difficult. And I imagine, would you say that you're also going after like a group that, like almost would want to use GIS? Because right, drones used to be daunting, and now I would agree they're not. That problem has kind of been solved. But then the GIS part, in my experience, is what's daunting. I have to get ArcGIS, I have to learn this, and then once you're a master, you can be a master in that, and then say, well, but I don't really know how to give it to anybody else because I'm the master, and who is the master on the other side that I give the keys to? So would you say that is both like for people who want to use GIS and are new to it, but also are experienced at GIS and need to share and having those sharing issues, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. We do say we're a collaborative GIS, and that again, you've got these GIS analysts who are super, super smart people using powerful tools like ArcGIS and all of that to get some great insights. but those people are limited. That skill set, that workforce is limited. And if we're getting them to do the simple stuff, like, I can't get this shapefile to go to someone, like, can you just do this basic analysis? And they're scratching their head going, oh, why am I wasting my time on here? My skills are much
Right.
better, and the deeper knowledge sharing, right? So what if we can give that simple task back to the site managers, back to the project managers? So will you do this? It's a really simple tool, simple way to do it. They feel empowered. They can get the insights faster. Let these GIS analysts work on the really big problems with the powerful software over there. But then how do we bring them together as well? So that we have this interoperability between the systems where data can be shared both ways, so that you can have your technical and your non-technical people working on the data together. But it is built absolutely to be intuitive, so that a non-GIS tech person like me can be. I am non-technical. I get called into the product team meetings for the dummies view. Hey, Paul, we're trying to design this, but we want to make sure that it's going to work for everyone. And you're the dumbest person on the team, so if it works for you, it'll work for everyone, right? So that's my role in the team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really, when I found it, I was like, this is GIS for the masses. This is so, it's brilliant. Like, I really appreciated that aspect of it, because that rabbit hole of GIS gets deep quick, but it's so powerful.
Smart people want to use simple tools as well. I think there's this tendency of like enterprise software, quote unquote. And, I feel a lot of software. We talked about this the last podcast where we had Rash Kasami from Nira. I see a similar thing here where software developers seem to tend to say, oh, they're engineers, they're super smart, they'll figure all this complicated, like they like it complicated. I don't know, there seems to be this running feeling when I interact with software, and I think it's the complete opposite. The more complex your job is, the more you need the tools to just work, right?
Yeah. Oh, look, we obsess over making things simple, right? And the amount of time that sometimes you spend on making sure that you go, well, should this be one click or two clicks? How can we make it just one click? How is that button color obvious enough for people, right? And when we get feedback and people go, oh yeah, I wasn't quite sure where okay, right. Okay, if you're not sure, then we haven't got it right yet.
Let's make it flash.
Yeah.
It's blinking at you. Push this button.
Yeah.
How are you still using satellite data in GeoNadir, or do you find that it's gravitated towards more of this? I know remote sensing has been traditionally reserved for satellite data, but I've heard it. I think it's starting to be more and more incorporated into just any general remote capture of data, whether it's drones or fixed wing or what have you. But do you still mix those two different types of data sets? Because I feel like, or I guess one of the things about drones is they are so nimble that you might not get a satellite update to the data you need for 6 months, where the drone, because kind of that democratization is, you can go out and have much more frequent updates to these things. And so how are those two still interplaying within your platform?
Look, they are critical to have it all. It's like, do I need a hammer or a sledgehammer for this job, right? And it depends on scale and what I'm trying to achieve. So it's about choosing the right tool for the right job, and it's not a either or. Sometimes it's a both. So drones are fantastic for ultra high resolution, small scale in terms of area, and I can also choose when I fly it. So gap in the weather, we've got something that's happening right now, I need this captured today, and relatively cheap to capture that data. Then you go that next level up, and you've got your fixed wing, whether that's fixed wing drones or aircraft data capture. Again, below the clouds, can cover a greater area, but it's also very, very, well, it's more expensive than your drone data, and you're not going to capture it every single day. And then your next layer up is your satellite data. And then we can get global coverage. We can get ecosystem coverage. We can get coverage across this whole city. But we have those limitations. Obviously, it's above the clouds. We can still get daily capture if we want to pay for it, but it's a lot more expensive. And we can get good resolution, right? So we can get sort of 50 centimeter pixel resolution. It's expensive. The free data, Sentinel data, we've got maybe 10 meter resolution on that data.
Right.
So, and what we can do is we can combine all of those. And so this is what we're working on for the platform over the next 6 months, is we're going to start to integrate some of the Sentinel data for a lot more of that ecosystem habitat classification type of stuff. So looking at things like deforestation, or looking at habitat classification for density mapping, which is important for fisheries, for instance. And so these sorts of things that we can use the drone data, ultra high resolution, to see what things are, and basically sort of use this from an AI perspective, right? Is to train our satellite models to be more accurate, so that we can tell. If I took a satellite image, you zoom into Google Maps and things go all pixelated, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, is that a tree, or is that something else, or what is it, right? Well, I can see it on a satellite image, on a drone image, really clearly, so I can tell the computer, this is this, this is this, this is this. And then I can scale that up to the satellite data and make our satellite global models a lot more accurate.
Interesting. So like inferred satellite data almost now you're dealing with, where you're like pulling out maybe not resolution, but more information based on more insights based on less information, because you've got less pixels maybe to figure out what that is than on a drone. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah, so
I never thought about that.
Satellite data, your pixel size is larger compared to your drone, but it's all remote sensing is all about pixel colors, right?
Right.
And so you can sort of then start to look at your pixel colors and basically train those models around the pixel colors within drone data and what that same pixel color looks like in a satellite.
Interesting.
Cool. Very cool.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, and because I was going to ask, is there the drone data is basically training the larger satellite data, and is that happening? You're doing that training within the GeoNadir platform, or is there some larger like group that's trying to push to train like the Sentinel satellite? Like, is that how is this being managed from a macro scale?
Look, there's lots, right? We sort of spoke about that hotbed of innovation in geospatial. There's lots happening in Australia and around the world on this sort of stuff. People building models, so you'll be able to, we talk about ChatGPT bringing out new models, right, all the time, and everyone's bringing out models, and that generative AI side, we're going to see a lot more, I suppose, geospatial AI models that become either things that you can plug in or proprietary models. We're going to see a lot more of that come out, I'd say, over the next sort of 12 to 24 months that are more accessible to people. And that's what we want to bring into GeoNadir, is these models that you can then select and be able to run classifications on, or be able to identify things as we go, right? Like that's that, because what we're trying to do is, as a user, you don't care for the analysis, you care for the insights. And so how do we get you faster from data capture to data insights? That's all you care about as a user with this data. At the moment, the technology is just forcing you that you have to manually go through and do that analysis, identify things, measure things.
Right.
But the holy grail here is, well, how do I just get the insights? So yeah, we can go deeper on what I think is the I suppose the holy grail of this whole workflow at some point.
Sure, I would love to hear that. But and Geo AI, like, it's a relatively new term, and I've seen some of the players in the market who are. It's more of the way you're interacting with the data is conversational almost. It's like, hey, I need extract these. I want it in blue, and make my line thickness too, and it just starts to do the data extraction for you. So
Yeah.
is this kind of what you're talking about? Like, what is your holy grail of the of where this is going?
Yeah, well, look, I think that it is conversational. First off, right, is that being able to ask conversationally, and there's a few steps there. So where we're at right now with the technology, so DJI has brought out their drone in a box, their Matrice 4 drone in a box, that can be vehicle mounted. All right, and so as a project manager, I can be sitting in my office planning of my site. I'm going to go for a drive today, planning out what I want to capture some data on. I drive my pickup out with my drone in a box mounted on the back. I get to site. I'm talking to my to my team on site at the same time. My drone is taking off and capturing that data. That data is being captured whilst I'm doing the rest of my site inspection. I come back to my truck, my drone lands back in its box. I'm driving back to the office. At the same time, that data is uploading via satellite internet up to a tool like GeoNadir. By the time I get back to the office, then that data has uploaded, it's begun processing. And then the ultimate here is then I've been able to interact conversationally with GeoNadir and tell it what I want to find, what I'm looking for, and then the GeoAI goes to work and starts to do all of that. You then log back into that project, and it says, "Hey, here's some things I've found." Right?
Yeah,
Would
like
you
what
just
changed,
like
right?
exactly
It
just
could
like
be,
just like ChatGPT? It says, "Here's what I've found for you. Would you like me to investigate this a little bit more?" Yes, please. Tell me to this, that, right? And all your back and forth with interacting with the data. Would you like me to spit that out in a table that you can download and send to a client?
Yes,
Right?
please.
Like that's so we've already got that
Cool.
drone data capture piece. You can, write licenses and all of that you can go and do today. But then this is where we need to head with the GeoAI stuff, but also to a point where it can also go, I've found some satellite data or I found some drone data from previous in your archives. Would you like me to also do some comparisons with where things have changed? Right? Like, how do we interact with these different layers of data in a conversational way? That there is where the industry needs to go to, and for us to get the power out of all of this data.
Yeah. Do you think it'd reach a point even where like it might even recommend where you capture, right? Because that's an interesting thing we've run into. I've done projects where like we're doing like water leak detection and stuff where we have pretty good satellite data, and they're like, do we look there first with the drone, or do we look over there second with the drone? Almost even like recommendations on where to capture, where to get that next level of resolution if it's not in a database. Do you see that as being like a feedback loop where, like, I don't know, it's making recommendations on, okay, you should drive your car over there and then grab that on drone because I don't have it on satellite very well.
Look, yes, I think so. Like this comes back to, how do we interact with ChatGPT and what is ChatGPT able to learn about us? So ChatGPT has obviously got the context, the knowledge of the internet, but then because it saves all of those context windows when we're using it, it then learns about us and about the questions we're asking it, and about, if I feed it stuff about my business or my problems, it then learns through those context windows as well.
Right.
So I think that definitely we're going to have that same style of thing through our spatial data, and it will start to learn a little bit about what are the problems that are most important to me, to my business, and how do I solve them. And by learning all of that knowledge from the internet as well, it can suggest places to look or read research articles and bring that knowledge in as well, right? So yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting way on how do we solve problems. But one of the really interesting things that we're finding here is you've got to know the right questions to ask.
Right. There's a
that
whole
is the
thing
big
about
challenge.
prompting, right? Like the whole thing about AI and prompting
Mm.
is it's fascinating.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Because it is still, with drone data, people who've flown drones for mapping, know that if you collect crap data, you get a crap result.
Yeah.
Right? You can't out process bad data.
Right.
And it's the same with the AI side, right? If you ask it a dumb question, you're going to get a dumb answer.
Yeah.
And so it's about having that knowledge and that experience to ask really good questions and to have that patience to keep iterating. That's when we get really good answers. And I think, that's something that we've really got to develop as we get into this GeoAI, is to make sure that we're generating good things. Because a map is knowledge and power, and people if you presented a map to someone and they looked at it and it's really nicely presented, well, that's truth.
Yeah.
Right? It could be wrong. But
wait, is this
people will
map
look at
flat or is it round? Hold on.
It's true. I remember someone once said all maps lie to varying degrees because you're excluding, by showing something, you're excluding something. So what truth do you show on the map, right? What lens do you put on it?
This is really interesting because you've heard the term like history is made by the people who wrote the history, and you think about all these older maps and all these cartographers that were mapping things to the best of their ability, but maybe under some paradigm of their time, whether it was a flat earth or whatever it is. It's like how that is, again, this whole democratization is just happening where there's no hiding the truth. Like it's all there. And I'm, Scott and I both kind of self-taught GIS enthusiasts and no formal education, but I know there's so many times that I know what I want to get out of my GIS system, but it takes me a little effort to like go through the research to find what I need. But if it's this conversation of like, hey, this is what I need out of this data or this analysis, and to be able to interact with it that way is so exciting that I think man, I don't know. For me, like GIS is one of the most consequential tools that is around right now, just globally and environmentally. I think it just has so much potential.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Well, I know we wanted to definitely touch on the educational component too, because this is also a common theme with a lot of our guests, whether it be, in the AEC space where people are just having a hard time finding folks to just finding good folks or people that are interested, or, I just think there's this huge shift in interests for young people to, what they're interested in. It's a technically driven world these days. And one part of me is like, okay, that's the good and bad. I think technology is obviously going to play a role in helping solve our challenges ahead. But I also think it could be this thing that pulls us further, that it creates that divide of like us being connected to nature. It can maybe create more of a rift in that sense too. So trying to straddle that from the educational standpoint. But I know that you're doing a lot of important work in education of students and through STEM, and you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So we have a program called She Maps. So she is in female and maps, came from Karen. Again, you've seen a theme here that Karen does a lot, and I work in the background trying to catch up. But so Karen is a female. She maps the Great Barrier Reef. And this here is all about how do we bring more kids into being scientists, seeing themselves as scientists, as people within STEM. Kids are inquisitive. They ask questions. And we want them to be able to asking those questions about the world around them. And drones are a great hook, right, to engage students in asking questions and having an inquiring mind. And so we use drones. We go into schools using little micro drones to get students flying, working in teams, becoming geospatial scientists, and simulating mapping to collect data. And then we work get them working with GeoNadir and using real data to ask questions about their backyard, their environments around them that they have in the community. This is how we feel. We've been doing this for 9 years, taught tens of thousands of students all around the world with this, and got teachers using resources as well. And if we can increase students' confidence so that they can see it to be it, they can dream, oh, wow, I didn't know about this opportunity. I didn't realize that you could do all of this with drones, with data, with caring for the environment, with whatever, having an impact on my community. That's what we're all about, increasing student confidence. And next part is about teacher capability. And I think here in Australia, I'm sure it is the same over in the US, is that we've got lots and lots of teachers that are teaching out of field. Right? They're not trained geography teachers. They're not trained maths teachers, but they're passionate. But they sometimes get thrown into the deep end, and we've got a teacher shortage here in Australia. And so, how do they create engaging lessons using this emerging technology that they haven't got a background in learning about, right? And so we help increase teacher capability with resources and helping them take a few steps further forward than where their students are at, so that they have that confidence to teach this themselves as well. And I'm sure we can all remember those teachers that we really look to and who are passionate about what they did and stretched us in as students. That's what we want to do and support teachers to be, is really passionate about this area and stretch their students and enjoy teaching it. And then the last part is about connecting with industry, right? Is bringing in industry professionals, and whether that's via a Zoom call or into the classroom or posters on the wall, so that they can see all the different uses, the wonderful and weird ways that this technology has been used. And it's that whole saying, if you throw enough mud at something, some of it will stick, right? If we throw enough experiences and opportunities at kids, something will stick with them. Go, I like that. I want, that's what I want to follow. Awesome. All right, we've found something that we can get a kid passionate about. And so we want to throw enough mud at these students that they'll hopefully try and find something that really engages them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have teenage kids, so I appreciate that more than you know. Just like, we tried to expose them to as much as we could, and just seeing what takes and where their interests lie. And sometimes as when I was a young adult, it was still like, oh, what do I want to be when I grow up? When I'm just sitting here in my 20s, like,
yeah.
And then looking back, like, how would I have done things differently, just from a career path? I mean, I'm not somebody who looks in the rear view mirror. So that's amazing. I think the great thing about this work too is it gets people outside and engaging directly with the environment.
What do kids want to see mapped? Do they, when you're like, we can do maps, do they gravitate towards any? Do you find a theme, or is it like every kid's got their own interests and they're kind of?
Well, so we're using little micro drones indoors, and so we have these 2 meter, so what are they? Just over 6 foot by 6 foot maps that are printed on cloth, and they are a satellite image or a drone image, and we try and fight. So we've got all the capital cities of Australia and bits and pieces, so we lay this map down of Sydney, and if we're in New South Wales, and the students are trying to find things. Oh, there's the Sydney Opera House. There's the Harbour Bridge. Oh, wow, I've been there. I went there last week. Like they're trying to find things that they know, and that top down view, it engages students. It engages people, right? Because it's a perspective that we don't often see unless we're exploring Google Maps and that. And so people like to see that, and that then opens that conversation up to say, so how would we use this data, right? And so that's what engages our students, is these image maps that we have that, we fly our drones over to simulate a mapping mission, and the students can then get this visual of what that data would look like from a drone.
So cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna date myself. My dad used to like. I grew up in a time where you had to have a road map stuffed in the car to get anywhere. So I remember like flipping through those as a kid and be like, where's this place? Like, what are all these? You can drive here. You can go. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing that we found our way anywhere back in those days, right?
Well, I think that, I mean, yes, I was always somebody, even still, like if I find a road atlas, I'm just looking through it and just appreciating the work that went into that. But on the flip side of this whole conversation is I think that we're losing something as a species with, as amazing as Google Maps is, I think people navigationally are becoming they're losing an edge, if you will, because if you're constantly relying on Google Maps to tell you where to go, you're not really paying attention to the landmarks and looking like, oh yeah, here's the building over here. I know I got to turn left there, and just like knowing how to navigate and get around. And I imagine Paul, coming from a military background, like that whole mapping and navigation. I took some ROTC classes in college, and I took a mapping course, and it was fascinating to me, like to be able to like confidently drop you off in the middle of the woods with a compass and a map, and like to be able to figure it out. Like, how do you get out of this situation, or how do you find these monuments with the tools that are given to you? So I think there's something very primal and hardwired into us that we are navigators as people. And I feel like, this is again kind of going back to this technology, the pros and cons and some of these things where, I think some of these tools, when they're relied on too heavily, i.e. like Google Maps or some sort of mapping thing and just general navigation, that you lose something. Would you agree that, or how do you balance that in your educating and just?
Well, Mike, you're starting to sound a little bit like back in my day, we had to go and catch the horse and 10 miles through a blizzard blind, and I knew exactly where to get myself. Back in you kids have got it easy today. I think that yes, there is a bit of that, of some of those skills. But I think that when we look back at the advances in technology, that we've thought that we're going to lose some critical skills at every point of major points of innovation, and yet as a species we've been able to survive and thrive and find the ways to do that we need to do. But like if we had if the world went down from an internet perspective in all devices, I think would be stuffed, right?
Yeah. But I've actually thought about writing a novel about, like, there's a big solar flare and it just knocks out all of the electronic equipment. And because there's a recorded, I think it was back in the 1400s, 1700s, there was a huge solar storm that, they say if that happened in today's era, like we would have some serious issues. So it very well could happen again. I'm definitely not a doomsday person, but it's kind of there's a little bit of this romantic, nostalgic piece of me. It's like, oh, wouldn't that be so nice if we could all go back to riding horses again? And like,
I fight that too, but then this is where I'm going to sound like the young person here. My pet peeve is like, when like my grandparents will tell me to get somewhere, and then they'll of course reference every single landmark and tell me turn by turn directions, and I'll be like, I have Google Maps. It's like we don't have to do that anymore. We're good. Like, I'll save you like 20 minutes here. But yeah, I think there's a balance, right? There's some balance between knowing how to experience the world as it is around you and not constantly stare at Google Maps. But then I don't know, there's definitely huge benefits to it.
And that all comes in that education. I think working with kids on how to balance the use of the tools that are at our disposal, because I do feel like we have a lot of challenges ahead, and there are really critical tools that we have to help solve those things. And we certainly, I'm not a Luddite by any. Is it Luddite or Luddite? Luddite, right?
Yeah.
Definitely not a Luddite. So I love technology. I also recognize when I'm just so deep into it that I need to zoom out a little bit and go take a walk in the woods.
Yep. Yeah.
I'll add to that too, that I think having Google Maps, like if we had Google Maps for every hiking trail, I'd actually get quite bored.
Yeah.
So I'll just add that too. Even I like to go on a hike and just be like, I'll take the paper map and not worry too much
Get
about,
lost.
we'll
Maybe.
figure it out.
Yeah. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
get lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so is there anything on, we talked about the Geo AI, which is super exciting. I am seeing bits of it, bits and pieces of it, like spending time on LinkedIn and seeing some of the things that are happening. So I am very excited to see that coming down the pike. But what are some of the things on the horizon for GeoNadir that you're really excited about?
I'm really excited for where we're going with some of our Geo AI tools, right? And bringing in some satellite data into it, as I mentioned before. I think that we've solved that intuitive workflow for drone mapping data from data capture to data insights. It's, as you've seen, Mike, it's intuitive. So now it's about how do we speed up that process in the middle. How do we get people to insights faster? I am really interested in seeing how, as we've spoken about here, how the conversational large language models can interact with an action model. So where I can ask a large language model something, and then a large action model, for want of a better term, actually does something on an interface. And I think that's some development over the next sort of 6 months, 12 months that is going to be really interesting to see where it goes.
Cool. Yeah, because they, as incredible as ChatGPT is, you're absolutely right. There's that talking between large language models and what you can get in GIS. There's a big gap there. I think it almost feels like one of the last frontiers when I think about it, because you can have ChatGPT look at a photo, right? Go through a Word document, all that, but you can't say, hey, ChatGPT, like, which ArcGIS layer has the data I'm looking for, or something like that, or which shapefile on this map will pull out whatever I want. So it's a really interesting point there.
I do have ChatGPT doing a lot of coordinate transformations for me.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, I never even thought of that.
I'll feed it an Excel, like a points file from a surveyor, and I'll be like, hey, transform these into this different coordinate system. And then I'll drop it into QGIS and just double check and triple check. And because, as it says, they can hallucinate every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta dot your I's and cross your T's. But
you definitely got to check its math once in a while is what I've found. But that's a really, I never even thought about that one. That's a cool one.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to make sure our listeners know about GeoNadir, or anything other? I know that you're involved in more than just GeoNadir. So,
look, I think that the biggest thing that we find is when people are coming into this sort of space is you have to ask questions, right? And I sort of really encourage people to go and speak to people who, if you're just getting started with drones, go and speak to people before you buy a drone, right? If you're just getting started in this analysis piece, go and talk to someone who is that little step ahead. It'll save you so much money, and I think this is one of the things that we get frustrated with is, I've just bought a brand new drone. I've bought this model and I want to start mapping. Sorry, you just spent $3,000 on the wrong model, and mapping's not simple. So that's, I think, is where I'm completely open to it. I'm an educator at heart. I love talking to people and being able to help them understand what's the answer you are really wanting to get to after you've captured this data, and let's work backwards through that workflow and go, right, okay, so here's the drone you need. Here's the information and the knowledge that you need to get you to that answer. Because often I think, Scott, you said, we overcomplicate things, right? And sometimes there's just a really simple way. It's not even AI that we need. It's just do this and this and this. Oh, well, that's simple. I can do that. Yeah. So I love to be able to talk to people and work through this stuff with people. So my inbox is open for people to ask me questions and have a chat about helping to solve some problems with spatial data.
Yeah,
great,
awesome. Great. Yeah, I know a big part of why Scott and I started this podcast is because we both love to educate and share the knowledge too, and have opportunities to sit down with awesome folks like yourself. So we always like to end each episode with something that inspired you or had a huge impact on your life or your career or the direction of, the company, but, it could be a book, it could be a movie or an experience. What has been a really impactful inspiration for you?
That's a really interesting and powerful question, and a simple one for me. It's my time in the military. I did 11 years in the military, and it still feels like it was something that I experienced yesterday, but it was 15 odd years ago now, and but I come back to those skills that I've learned every single day without probably even knowing it. So yeah, for me, what shaped me as a person, as a leader, is being able to strategize and all that. That's also dealing with kids, those military skills, dealing with chaos. Yeah, it's those skills. It's also those skills of seeing things from other people's perspectives. And I have been lucky enough to travel a lot, and and lucky enough, but also unfortunate to see people at their worst. Whether that there is because of the situation that they've been placed in, and unfortunately they were placed in a horrible situation, or to see some horrible people doing things, and you see things from different perspectives, and you're able to then work through and work out how to solve problems at the end of the day. So yeah, to me that's what shaped me as I am as a human, and it's not one person, it's not one event, it's all that multitude of things that have come together for me. So yeah, that's what builds me and inspires me every day.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Great perspective.
Good. Yeah, and don't judge until you've walked in another person's shoes. It's hard to know what any given person is dealing with on any given day in any given moment, and it's so valuable. Well, really, really awesome stuff you guys are doing at GeoNadir, and I am excited to keep pace and keep an eye on what you're up to, and we'd love to hear about it. I'm sure we'll keep touch over the months ahead, and just really excited about what you guys are doing, and would highly encourage our listeners to check out GeoNadir. And again, Paul has said, reach out if you have questions, and I don't know if you want to share any contact info or just direct anybody to any websites just to make sure that they have what they need.
Yeah, sure. Look, you can find me on LinkedIn. So Paul Mead, MEAD, you'll find me on LinkedIn. GeoNadir, so Geo as in GEO, and Nadir, NADIR.com. You'll find us on there, and my email is just paul@geonadir.com. So anywhere there, please reach out if you like. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and let's chat.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thanks so much for sharing your incredible insight here, Paul. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, much appreciated. Well, we'll hope to catch up with you again on another episode.
My pleasure, and let's do one on the beach at Palm Cove.
Yes,
that's a deal.
Out of the way of the crocodiles.
Done.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely look you up when I find the time to make it there. That's my kids they're almost, well, my daughter's in high school, my son's about to be in high school, so it happens fast. So I'm sure it'll be too long where we're empty nesters and it's like, let's go travel, let's do it.
There you go.
All right, well, take care, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay,
see ya.